Good evening and welcome to the Municipality of Anchorage Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals for April 11th. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Tanya Hickok.
Here.
Dal Smythe.
Here.
Stephanie Eicher.
Here.
Ken Ayers.
Here.
Dave Hale.
Here.
Monica Emerton.
Here.
Thank you.
First order of business are minutes, approval of minutes. We have minutes from Thursday, January 10th, 2019. Oh. Okay. Never mind. I've had a request to reorder the agenda to hear case number 4 under public hearings first rather than fourth. And I would like to move the annual election of officers to the end of the agenda. May I have a positive motion, please?
Madam Chair, the reordering the agenda is welcome, but the petitioner's representative hasn't arrived. He was sort of gaming it. Where's Tamash? Oh, he is here. Okay, never mind. Apologize for the
There's no place to do a motion? Stephanie?
Madam Chair, I
moves the-
move to amend the agenda as you just outlined.
And Mr. Ayers seconds. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is reordered. Now, the next order of business is to approve the minutes from January the 10th. I have a motion. Ms. Eicher. Ken Ayers seconds. Are there any additions or deletions or edits for the minutes? Seeing none, is there any objection to approval of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Next order of business is disclosures. Are there any disclosures for this evening? Mr. Hale.
So in case number 2019-0030, I know Mr. Dugan through personal relationships and friendships, and I work quite a bit with Mr. Deek. So I'd like to recuse myself if I can.
Do we have a motion regarding Mr. Hale? Ms. Eicher?
Mr. Hale, through the chair, do I understand that pursuant to the conflicts of interest, you feel that you have a substantial private interest in the matter such that you could not be impartial to hearing the case before us?
Through the chair, I don't think so.
Okay.
If there's enough votes, I just don't want there to be any sense of impropriety, I guess.
Okay. Through the chair, since we have enough board members to hear the case today, I would move to allow Mr. Hale to recuse himself.
Is there a second? Ms. Hickok? Would you please vote? Please vote. So the motion is to direct to participate. That is backwards, so. My apologies. That's okay. No, I don't think it's you. Okay. So, you're excused. Does he have to leave? It's the first, yeah, it's the first case, so. Okay, so we have nothing on the consent agenda, no appearance requests, no unfinished business, nothing on the regular agenda. So that brings us to the public hearings. And all of the public hearings are variance hearings. So I need to go over the procedure for variance hearings. Chair shall introduce the variance and explain the procedure to be followed, so that's what we're doing. The board shall hear and rule on any objections to the sufficiency of notice. The staff will present a brief outline of the variance. Board members and the applicant may then ask questions of the staff through the chair. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes to present their case and may reserve time for rebuttal. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant to convince the board by a preponderance of evidence that the variance should be granted. The board members and the staff may then ask questions of the applicant through the chair. The hearing shall then be open for public testimony. Representatives of groups have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. Time is kept by the secretary. Display at the front will be green to within a minute of the time allowed and then will turn yellow. At this time, you should begin to sum up your testimony. At the end of the time allowed, the light will turn red and a tone will sound. All persons who testify may be questioned by board members, staff, and the applicant. On the conclusion of public testimony, the staff, followed by the applicant, shall have the right of rebuttal. The chair will close the public hearing and the matter will rest with the board. Any action by the board shall require the favorable vote of a majority of the fully constituted board. The fully constituted board shall include all members of the board, including vacancies and those not excused for conflict of interest. For a variance to be granted, all 8 standards must be met, and it will take 5 votes. Every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face that it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal with Superior Court. That's it. Okay. So, with the reordered agenda, the first case is case 2019-0030. The petitioner, Joe Dugan, is the petitioner or his representative here? Okay, thank you. Will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 579 public hearing notices were mailed on February 21st. The Historic Preservation Commission adopted a resolution in support of the granting of these 2 variances. 3 late comments were received from the public. Those are in the supplemental information. Also, the South Addition Community Council adopted a resolution in support of granting the variances, and that is also in that supplemental packet.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
Thank you. This is a request for a variance from the dimensional standards for residential districts to allow a new garage and dwelling unit above to encroach 5 feet into the required 10-foot side setback adjoining the alleyway. The petitioner also requests a variance from the required minimum lot area for multifamily dwellings. The regulations require 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit when you do single-family style, and they're doing 3 dwelling units, single-family style, and the petitioner is proposing 3 dwelling units, which brings the total required lot area to 9,000 square feet. The lot only contains 7,000 square feet. They're 2,000 square feet less than what is needed. The petitioner has stated that the purpose of the variances is to preserve the Schonbeck House, which is a historic building in Anchorage. While the R2M district allows single-family homes on 6,000 square foot lots, duplexes on 6,000 square foot lots, you can't do 2 single-family style at all. Although you can do a duplex, but you can't do 2 single-family style. That doesn't help them in the preservation of a historic building. So they're forced to do 3 single-family style in order to because in order to preserve the building, because there's an existing house on the lot. You have a lot, it's 7,000 square feet, it has an existing house, they want to keep that, they want to move a historic building, relocate a historic building, home to the lot, so they have to add one more lot, hence the garage with the dwelling unit above. Okay, so in terms of the standards of approval, the first one, approval criterion A is not met. There's no extraordinary physical circumstances subject property, such as a stream, wetland, or slope, which necessitates the variances for side setback encroachments and a reduction in minimum lot area. The subject property is flat and has no special environmental features. The lot exceeds the minimum lot area in the R2M district, 6,000 square feet by 1,000 square feet for a single-family dwelling or a duplex. Approval criterion B, the department finds is not met. There are no physical circumstances of the petition site which create the undue hardship upon the property owner and would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. The R2M district regulations require a 10-foot side setback from the west property lot line adjoining the alley and a minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet for 3 dwelling units. Single-family style. The property is allowed to have a single-family or a duplex and meet the required setback, which could be done. However, not with the purpose that they have of preserving or relocating a historic structure to this property. Approval criterion C is not met. The petitioner seeks to preserve a historic building by moving it to this lot. This is a self-imposed hardship. The preservation of this historic building provides a community-wide benefit, but it is not necessarily for reasonable use of the lot. The lot already has an existing single-family home that conforms to the land use regulations. Approval criterion D is met. This one is met. There are no structure separation violations. Drainage and runoff do not appear to be issues. Approval criteria E is also met. The requested variance is dimensional and not a variance for prohibited use. The variance will not change the character of the zoning district, and in fact, it would enhance the South Addition neighborhood by preserving a structure from that neighborhood. Approval criterion F is met as well. Anchorage 2020 and the Anchorage Original Neighborhoods Historic Preservation Plan support the preservation of historic buildings, such as the Schonbeck House. Anchorage 2020 Policy 46 supports this. It says the unique appeal of individual residential neighborhoods shall be protected and enhanced in accordance with applicable goals, policies, and strategies. Anchorage 2020 Policy 51, the municipality shall define Anchorage historic buildings and sites and develop a conservation strategy. Historic Preservation Policy 1.6, maintain the unique character of the neighborhood, historic functions of alleys, historic streetscape appearance, low traffic streets, safe sidewalks, parks, open space, and appropriately scaled mixed-use development. Historic Preservation Policy number 2 also supports the preservation of the structure. Retain and preserve this the historic and cultural resources identified in the Historic Preservation Plan, public outreach process, and recorded in the Consolidated Historic Resources Inventory. And this is one of the structures on that in that inventory. Historic Preservation 5.11.2 discourage the demolition of buildings that provide cohesive neighborhood character. Approval criterion G is met. This is not related to ADA accessibility or reasonable accommodation. Approval criterion H does not appear to be met. The property owner is seeking to add a historic home and a garage with a dwelling unit above to this lot. The lot already has a legally conforming single-family home. The property owner could convert the single-family home into a duplex and add a garage without the need for variances from the regulations. No variances are needed for reasonable use of the land. However, 2 detached single-family style homes are not permitted in the R2M district. The Schonbeck House is a historic structure that should be preserved. However, 4 of the 8 approval criteria for variances is not found to be met. The department is recommending denial of the variance based on the approval criteria. However, after holding a public hearing, if the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals makes findings supporting that each of the approval criteria is met, then the approval should be subject to conditions 1 and 2 on page 6 of your packet. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Mr. Ayers?
Through the chair, did you state at the beginning of your testimony that there are not single-family style, dwelling style, more than one single-family dwelling style per lot in this zone? I guess what my main question boils down to, are 3 single-family dwelling style buildings allowed on R2M lot?
Oh, yes, they are. You just have to have 9,000 square feet. So Chapter 6, the Table of Dimensional Standards, sets forth the minimum lot area required for different types of development. And one of them, it says, dwelling multifamily with single-family or two-family style of construction, multiple buildings on a lot. So if you figure 2 duplexes or 3 single-family homes, or that sort of, for either single-family style or duplex style, you have to have 3,000 square foot per unit. They're proposing 3 dwelling units, which is 9,000, and they're 2,000 square feet short for the lot.
Yeah, thank you. I misheard you when you spoke earlier. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Smythe?
Through the chair for staff. So this, considering the adjacent zoning of R3, would this proposal be allowed, 2 questions, would the proposal for 3 separate structures, the garage and lot coverage, be allowed in R3 for a 7,000 square foot lot? And then I couldn't find, could you help us clarify why it's 2? I thought I heard you that it can't be 2, but that it could be 3. Why is the garage, what part of the garage being added is in the variance request?
All right. So I'll answer the second question first. There's a single-family home on this 7,000 square foot lot. They can have a single-family home, no problem. They could have a duplex, no problem. They cannot have 2 single-family style because the definition of multifamily starts with 3. So they have to have 3 in order to be multifamily. So there's sort of a loophole in the system or the terms, the definitions of things, because you can have a duplex, but you can't have 2 single-family style. There's a blank there where the code doesn't explicitly say it's allowed. It's not allowed because it's not explicitly allowed. You can have a duplex, but you can't have 2 single-family style. So these guys are forced to do 3 to get the multifamily, because you could do multifamily. It is an allowed use. However, if they did a triplex, they'd need to have 8,500 square feet. And if they did 3 single-family style, which is what they're proposing here, they have to have 3,000 per unit, so they have to have 500 more. That's 9,000 square feet. And they're just, the lot is just not big enough. You can't add area to the lot. This board has seen these types of dimensional variance requests before, sometimes in Mountain View, where somebody's got an oddly shaped lot and they're trying to do multifamily. They want to get 5 units, say, and they're close. They're 100 or 200 or 1,000 square feet short of being able to have that extra unit. And because the community's goals about trying to promote housing and the projected shortage of 7,900 dwelling units based on land capacity in Anchorage. In Anchorage 2040, a recently adopted plan identifies that we have a projected shortage of needed housing in the community. So one of the goals is to retain our residential land and to support the construction of residential of all class types and all income levels. I can't remember your first question. It had to do with?
Would this same development be allowed in R3?
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't prepared for that one. Let's see here. I'm looking at the table. It says that multifamily, 3 or 4 dwelling units. So you could do a 3-plex or a 4-plex on 6,000 square feet. That could be done in the R3 district. Let's see about single-family style or duplex style, having 3 units, see what it says there. It does not address that. That's something that doesn't exist there. Let's see. That means that the R3 allows more density. I can't quite say whether you could do 3 single-family style, but I guess your question is partially answered straightforward, that you can have a triplex or a fourplex on only 6,000 square feet. This lot has 7,000 square feet. But about the single-family style, I'm a little bit perplexed on that. You can have multiple buildings in the R3, but it doesn't have a line in this table that identifies that type of housing quite that way.
Thank you.
Ms. Iker?
Thank you. Through the chair, I recall in prior cases that the board has heard, some of the factors that we've considered that have gone into our findings with respect to A are the uses of the immediately adjacent lots to the subject matter lot. And I'm looking at the aerial map on page 10, and I'm wondering if you could speak to what the uses of the lots are across it looks like is it the alley? Looks like maybe there's a large commercial structure, a school or church or something, and then it looks like there's a parking lot of some sort. I was wondering if clearly there's residential uses nearby, but there's also some non-residential uses, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what's surrounding.
Yeah, the property owner might be able to chime in during their comments too. So this is a residential neighborhood, well-established residential neighborhood. It's one of the historic, original historic neighborhoods in town. So the original plat of Anchorage, the original Anchorage town site plat. This is South Addition, so this is an addition to the original plat. So across the alleyway is an apartment building. And then kitty corner is a parking lot that might, I'm not sure what that parking lot serves. And I think it's all single-family homes on the other properties that abut or face the petition site. And yes, I think that the board could make findings about the unique location and zoning relationship of the petition site. One could make findings.
Thank you.
Ms. Hickok?
In looking at table 2106-1 under R2, it mentions if you have more than one structure that you have to have 2107-110G2. And looking at that, it talks about affordable housing. Can you speak to that?
Could you repeat? Can you repeat the citation?
Yeah, more than one principal structure may be allowed on any lot tract in accordance with subsection 2107-110G2 in that table, under that use. Maximum number of principal structures per lot.
Thank you. It should say F2. I'm preparing an ordinance to correct that typo. That's an incorrect cross-reference. If you look in the R2M in the same location, it refers to F2. There's the R3A district is a newly adopted zoning district. It was adopted a few months ago or a year ago, and that shifted everything in that chapter. Let's see, no, it's recurrent to the G2. Anyway, the affordable housing has nothing to do with this.
Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I'd like to not really ask a question because you've answered it, but just make a clarification. So to meet the definition of multifamily, they need 3.
That's correct.
So if you want to, you have to have 3. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right, are there any questions of staff by the applicant? Okay, indicate no. So will the applicant or the applicant's representative please come forward and state and spell your name for the record?
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. My name is Tamás Deák, spelled D-E-A-K, and here with me is the petitioner, Joe Dugan, D-U-G-A-N. And what we would like to do is start with him, and then I will get into the technical details. We would like to reserve about a minute for rebuttal,
Okay.
and then dive into the case.
Reserve 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Joe Dugan. I'm the petitioner, and my goal with this variance is to be able to save the Schoenbeck house from demolition and preserve it as part of South Addition. I'm a lifelong Alaskan and live in South Addition. I've been a long admirer of the Schoenbeck house. I often walk home on G Street from the PAC. The multi-arch recessed entryway of the Schoenbeck house has helped set the tone of the historic character of South Addition. I think this is one of the most unique homes in Anchorage. It's featured on page 136 of Patterns of the Past. I knew Holquist bought this lot, and I heard that they were willing to let an interested party move the house, but the clock is ticking. Holquist needs to get to work on their redevelopment of that lot, and the Schoenbeck house will be demolished if it's not moved soon. I did a walkthrough last fall with another party interested in saving the house named Brandy. Brandy asked me at the end of the walkthrough if I really wanted the house. I told her no, I didn't. I just didn't want to see it get torn down. So we agreed I would step out and let her pursue it. Over the course of the winter, I heard her efforts had faltered, so I contacted Tamás and asked him to help me figure out a way to save the Schoenbeck house. I own a small house 1 block away at 1042H. One unique geographical feature of this house is it is in the Schoenbeck subdivision. That's one of the reasons why this is an appropriate new home for the Schoenbeck house. I don't think every old house in South Addition needs to be saved, but this one is iconic. I think we all recognize there will be a benefit to the community if this house is saved, but the problem is the house can't save itself. That's where I need your help. I have the interest, financial means to make it happen. I own the lot in the Schoenbeck subdivision, and Tamás has provided you with a logical framework with which will allow us to save it at 1042 H Street. I'll turn this over to Tamás to present our case.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to focus on the conditions, but before I do that, the 4 conditions which are currently not being proposed is met. But I want to thank staff for working on this and giving you a logical framework, and also want to thank them to clarify a bunch of things which I would have to talk about. So I'll start with the first one, which is about the criteria A. About exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstances. This statement also includes including but not limited to, and that's important to consider in this case because as Francis wrote the case, he has listed wetlands and other natural features to be obstacles to grant variances. In this case, we have a very unique case where the physical circumstance is simply coming from the location of this lot and the physical development of this lot. This lot happens to be in the same subdivision as the Schoenbeck house itself. The subdivision is called Schoenbeck subdivision. It's the second block of it. And in order for the move to happen, we were looking for a place, and Joe is ready to step forward to actually make this move for the building to be preserved. Because the statement on conditions on the environmental factors included on the natural features, I would like to point you to the NEPA section 4F, which is about historic preservation of structures. And NEPA being the National Environmental Protection Act is actually considering historical structures and historic resources as part of of the environment which we live in, not just the physical things like wetlands and streams and others. So I think we have a very strong case here to look at criteria A and make findings which would support it to be met, and I believe strongly that it does meet that. I would move on to the second one, which is criteria B, and that is about the exceptional hardship, or exceptional conditions creates an exceptional or undue hardship. In this case, and also depriving the property owner of the rights which are enjoyed by others. In this case, this is the only lot in this whole subdivision which actually has the physical characteristics to be able to make this happen. The surrounding buildings, one of you asked, are either large duplexes, large single families. There's an apartment complex across the alley. There is some parking lot. There is Star, the reindeer. There's all kinds of things around. But the point is that there is no other place to put this building. We have a unique opportunity with some constraints to make this happen. And I think the undue hardship would be basically, in order to move the house, demolish what's on the lot, which is, I think, a very strong undue hardship. And I think it's a sufficient basis for findings which would support this criteria as well. Moving on to criteria C, about the hardship being not self-imposed. And these special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the petitioner. I think this criteria is absolutely met. The lot, as it is on H Street, on which the building is going to be moved, is as is. It was purchased as is. The applicant has done nothing in changing physical conditions or create any kind of conditions on it which would prevent this case to be justifiable. So we strongly argue that the special conditions are not the result of the actions of the petitioners. The special conditions are the result of the actual physical condition of the lot. Now, it is a strong argument that we want to do this. Therefore, the hardship comes from the project. But the hardship doesn't come from the physical conditions. The only hardship here is that if you want to do this project, then you have to face the conditions on the lot. And in order to make it happen, which is the goal being moving the Schönbeck house and preserve it, that you have to create the conditions on the lot to make that happen within the zoning code. That only can happen, as you heard, if you have conditions where a single family house can land on this lot, which means that it has to get the other one off the lot. I think it's a very strong hardship condition, and I think in terms of whether it's self-imposed, it certainly is not. So I would say that we strongly support the argument that this condition is met as well. Lastly, I'm skipping over the ones which we already appear to agree on to be meeting. I'm not contesting any of those. The last condition is about minimum variances. And this is an interesting and highly technical aspect of this project, but you heard one of the key components from Francis already. In order to preserve a historic structure, it's fairly helpful if you don't alter it. So we want to move it as is, place it as is, and protect it as is, which means that this is a single-family structure, traveling as a single-family structure, and be placed on the lot as a single-family structure. That itself is a condition where you have to find a way in the code which would grant you the minimum variance. We were looking at the code. I was definitely looking at the options which would grant you a very clear but meeting a condition of being the least variance, very clear path to do that. And we certainly don't think that it's a very good precedent-setting idea to argue what duplex means. And in this case, what duplex would mean if we would go with the actual allowed use is that you somehow define duplex, ask for a variance, duplex to become two singular structures. That's a very high bar. A lower bar is dimensional standards, and in this case there is only one which we have to seek, which is the 3,000 square feet. That's the 1 minute?
No, that's the end. You had the yellow light, that was, there's 1 minute left for rebuttal.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So then in closing, all I would encourage is that please consider the conditions as stated, and then we'll use our time for rebuttal, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant by board members? Mr. Smythe.
Thank you guys for the presentation. Would you consider this development outside of what Tomasz was explaining as the minimum variance? Would you consider this without a garage?
I don't think I have a choice.
The answer is we don't think there is a path to get there, but to be honest, we never even thought about it because that was the only way to really seek this variance. The reason I'm saying that is because otherwise we have to produce two single-family homes on a lot, a singular lot, which is a very high bar for variances. So we had to go towards the multifamily solution, and that seemed like the minimum variance to be asked for.
So you didn't consider unit lot development in this, splitting it into two lots, having two completely separate structures?
We did not because as far as the planning rules go, currently the single-family buildings would not be able to be platted out like that because they are detached structures.
I'm not sure that's correct, but separately, it's not, if there weren't anything in your way to develop without the garage, you wouldn't do it? If there was a path without the garage, would you still be interested in this?
Yes.
Ms. Hickok.
Just a quick site plan question, Tomasz.
Yes.
On what's the separation between the buildings? Is it the minimum?
About 14 feet. So basically, here's an interesting fact on that. Because these buildings are exactly what they are, they already built, we know what they are. So we have a fairly good idea what they're going to look like when they are placed on the lot. So we had a fairly good access to really figure out what the spacing is. So obviously you have to meet separations for a fire. You have to look at the land coverage, calculated it at below thresholds. It's at 36% actually. Then you have to look at the open space areas. All of those meet current conditions. And what we did do is separate the buildings enough so every building will have its allowed open space in between with those decks as they laid out. So the separation distances are about 14 feet, somewhere in there, 14, 15, if I remember right.
Okay, so if you were to move the buildings closer to 10 feet, which is the minimum, I think, in
Yes.
building code, then there wouldn't be the open space. Is that correct?
It wouldn't be. We could probably allow the open space to exist, but then it wouldn't serve the purpose of serving the actual unit next to where it is. So what we try to do is create a site plan which is logical in a sense that every building enjoys its own open space as required by code.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I requested to speak. I think it'd be useful for the purposes of this discussion that I think that what the neighbors might comment, what I would comment if I was a neighbor, is that a unit above a garage would be preferable to no garage at all because parking in this neighborhood is very tight. On-street parking is in very limited supply. It's one of the only places in town where you have parking permitting. For on-street parking, you have to be a permit holder. And so the advantage of having a garage with a unit above is that you would have two spaces under the structure as opposed to either being parking on the street or having to create more impermeable spaces to do surface parking in the lawn area. And then to Ms. Hickok's comments, because they're being forced to do 3 dwelling units, then they're kicked into the residential design standards, which are significant. There's a whole section on residential design standards, and they require building separation distances from end units of 10 feet. They're just a complex set of puzzle of rules, regulations that multifamily or multiple structures on a lot are required to meet over and above the usual site design requirements. And it's really hard to answer those questions off the cuff at a meeting like this because it takes some real thinking and studying. Thank you.
So you didn't have any questions of the applicant by staff?
No, a comment. I just wanted to make a comment about two of the issues that were raised by commissioners.
Okay. Right, and then for to everybody else? The public? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're open for public testimony. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to testify in case 2019-0030? Please come forward, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Zan Frederick, Frederick. I am a homeowner in South Addition. I was previously a homeowner on G Street, and I am speaking in favor of allowing this zoning variance. I think the relocation of a historic house to this lot would be an appropriate use and is an opportunity to save the structure. I think there's investment and developing going on in this neighborhood, and I think there's room to allow this development to have some of it's going to be new modern construction, and some of it can lean towards preserving a historic look to the neighborhood and one beautiful building. So thank you, Madam Chair, board members.
Are there any questions of Mr. Frederick by the board? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in this case?
Yes, my name is Rodney Cladine. I am a resident of the South Addition, living on G Street for approximately 40 years. During that time, I have walked past the house in question, going to work every day. I've run past it. I've walked dogs past it. I think that it should be preserved. It is certainly the classiest house in the South Addition, and if it's a historic area, something will be lost if the house leaves the area. I would also prefer that it be preserved with the garage intact. That's an integral part of the house, and I concur with the comment with regard to off-street parking. Parking is an issue in the South Addition, although we cope with it, but it would be better that off-street parking be available to the resident. Thank you.
Could you spell your last name for us, please?
Yes, ma'am. K-L-E-E-D-E-H-N.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions of Mr. Cladine by the board? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening. My name is Seth Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-E-N. I'm a neighbor that lives in the area at 11th and N Street, and I would like to see the board approve this variance request. I think it would be a real shame to not approve a reasonable request that has very unique circumstances and that doesn't compromise the intent of a zoning district or the character of a neighborhood. Zoning codes aren't perfect and aren't broad enough to cover every unique situation, and that's the reason why they have situations like this where we can request variances. Approval of the request would allow improvements on an existing lot that would have less of an impact on the neighborhood than a new by right duplex or apartment building, and it's doing it in a way that would add housing while being compatible with the existing development patterns. And the type of housing that would result is exactly the type of housing that the 2040 land use plan and the neighborhood would like to see. Smaller housing that's built into the existing neighborhood can be more affordable than new construction and available to a larger portion of the community. If we step back from the technical nature of the zoning code and dimensional requirements and just ask, does this variance compromise the intent of a zoning district or the character of a neighborhood? I think it's pretty obvious to me that it doesn't, and it likely has less of an impact on the character of a neighborhood than the type of development that could be built without variances. As a neighbor and someone from the neighborhood, I would really encourage your support of approving this variance.
Are there any questions of Mr. Anderson by the board? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening. My name is Greg Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R. I live 3 houses down 1014 H Street. I've never met my neighbor, Mr. Dugan. This is an odd way to meet, but hello. And I'm against the variance. I'm sorry. Our house was built in 1941. I like old houses. I like the idea of saving the Schoenbeck house. It is a unique house, just not this way. Not the idea of shoehorning that house into what would already be a tight fit into something that would require 3 houses, the one existing, the Schoenbeck house, plus the garage. I like Commissioner Smythe's idea about, and I have no idea about zoning, so I don't know if this is possible, about pursuing perhaps just the Schoenbeck house, and Mr. Dugan's thought that might work well too. Gentlemen there talked about parking. It is an issue. If you drive by there, you'll see that particular corner is really jammed because you do have the apartment complex on the corner of 11th and I, so just right opposite the alley. And then, I don't know how many people live there, but there's a lot of parking there, permanent parking, and they're all on that particular corner on both sides. It really is quite jammed, and to the point where, I don't want to belabor or make too big of a point of this, but to the point where even just seeing around the corner for traffic is an issue. It is that tight. It truly is. The area is getting more dense. We have a condo, 4-unit condo right next to my house, right on the Park Strip, so at the other end of this one block. My understanding where the Schoenbeck house is going to go is going to be another 4-plex or a 4-unit condo, more density, and now this, a 3-unit, if that's the right way to put it, set of houses in an already crowded parking-wise area. That's an awful lot, and so I think the idea of trying to save the house is great, just not this way. Just not this way. I've got 30 seconds. My house, same lot size, 7,000 feet, has a single car garage. We bought it 1.5 years ago. We thought, gee, that's pretty small by today's standards. We wanted to tear it down, make 2-car. There wasn't room for just 2 cars. I mean, there was, but it would eat up the whole backyard almost. And here we're talking about a house and a garage, same lot size. So thank you very much for all your time, and thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Miller?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
Yeah, my name is David Bauer, B-A-U-E-R, and I also live on that block. I actually live 1 house closer than Mr. Miller. And I oppose the development. I appreciate the Schoenbeck house. I've known it as well. I know all the houses in the area. This is actually solving a problem that's actually created by the development of that lot, which is causing the demolition of that property. I think Mr. Smythe's idea, I don't know if his idea that's workable or not, is why does there have to be 3 units on that lot now? Because of that requirement, but that's asking a lot of that lot. It's a 7,000 square foot lot. I'm not sure it could even actually support 2 individual residences there, but 3 is asking a lot. As Mr. Miller said, it is congested there. There's the Hahn apartment buildings there, all the access through that alley. The cars park along 11th Avenue. It gets very crowded. 3 different separate units there would just add to that. So that'd be my concern there. This is kind of, I'm just getting up to speed of this. I just realized the notion of the issue was from today, that it was actually moving that Schoenbeck house to that residence. I'm not sure if there's other things to explore. Is one individual trying to do this? But it actually is trying to address a bigger problem, which is demolition of older historical houses in that neighborhood by these development of multiplexes, essentially, which has happened on the other end of the block. And that I do not like. I do like the small residences, the historical residences, but I'm not sure you get all 3 on that lot, which is what they're trying to accomplish, which is my concern. So, thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Bauer?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone else wishing to testify in case 2019-0030?
Hello, my name is Patrice Parker. I live at 1550 H Street. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about adding density to our neighborhood. And the density I've seen are tall, modern buildings that are blocking solar access. And, you know, they take away from the character and the history of our neighborhood. And I just love this idea of saving that house. And I understand it will add density, but I think it's the kind of density that we need in our neighborhood. And as an H Street resident, I encourage it. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Parker? Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
Thank you. My name is Penny Cordes. I own the residence at 1026 West 10th Avenue, which is a couple of blocks to the west of the house that is going to be moved. And I am in favor of the variance that would allow for the preservation of what I think is one of the most charming older houses in the neighborhood. And I've looked at the lot to which it would be moved. It looks like there's sufficient room to do so, and that it would be compatible with the other buildings surrounding and across the street from the proposed site of having the 2 buildings on that same site. So I'm very much in favor. I would just ask that if this variance is approved, that it is clearly understood that the intent is for the preservation of the old historic house, and that it's not for the purposes of sometime in the future of being able to increase the footprint on the lot to which it's being proposed to be moved. Thank you.
Corliss, is that right?
Cordes, C-O-R-D-E-S.
D-E-S, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Cordes? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case 2019-0030? Anyone at all? Seeing none, are there, I think we get the rebuttal. Okay. The conclusion of the staff, I can have a rebuttal. Okay. Does the staff have any rebuttal?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Does the applicant have any rebuttal? You have a minute. Talk fast.
Madam Chair, it's going to be a brief rebuttal. First of all, thanks for everybody to show up and express their opinions about the case. Looks like we have strong support and some concerns. I'm going to talk about the concerns. You've seen the site plan. The buildings are small existing buildings, 800 square feet in size. The current zoning code allows way bigger buildings, and one of them being that fourplex, which is going to be put in place of the Schoenbeck house, with way more access in terms of, or way more detriment in terms of densities and size. As far as parking, we don't seek variances for parking. The parking is met on site with this plan. All of it is met. There's no variances needed. And we have felt that in order to find the proper channel to get this project done, you have to be mindful of context, which we are, have to be mindful of how the project will work, which I think we are, and also have to be mindful of the neighborhood. Both of us live in the neighborhood. I strongly encourage you to approve the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. So may I have a positive motion, please? Come on, kids, you can do it.
In the case of 2019-003, a variance from AMC Table 2106-1 Dimensional Standards Residential Districts for side setback encroachment and minimum lot size in the R2M district. I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Mr. Smythe seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Subject to conditions 1 and 2 on page.
Yes, subject to conditions 1 and 2 on page 6.
Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes. I believe I intend to support my motion. I believe that given the applicant's review of the standards, as well as the historical nature of the Schoenbeck house, and the way that they've thoughtfully tried to figure out the minimum variances required to make this happen, to preserve a historic building, I intend to support the motion.
Would you mind
Going through the standards?
going through the standards, please?
So under findings, finding A, there exists exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstances of the subject property, such as but not limited to streams, wetlands, slope, and those circumstances are not applicable to other land in the same district. The lot in question is an existing lot within the Schoenbeck subdivision. The historical building in question is the Schoenbeck house, which is notated in the HPP as being preserved. That need to be preserved. So in that instance, it's an existing extraordinary physical circumstance. Finding B, because of these physical circumstances, the strict application of this code creates an exceptional or undue hardship upon the property owner and would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of the zoning district. This standard is met. This is the only lot in the subdivision that could be used to relocate the Schoenbeck house, as stated by the applicant, and undue hardship upon the demolition of the Schoenbeck house. That would be the hardship, is the demolition of the Schoenbeck house, which is a historical building. Finding C, the hardship is not self-imposed. Any special condition and circumstances do not result in the actions of the applicant, and such conditions and circumstances do not merely constitute inconvenience. As stated previously by the petitioner, the existing lot conditions were not self-imposed. There is available area, as noted on the site plan, with the minimum variance requested to make use of the parcel. Finding D, the variance, if granted, will not adversely affect the use of the adjacent property as permitted under this code. The standard is met. The standard assumes that, as noted in the planning staff, it's not going to be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare if the variance is granted. Finding E, the variance, if granted, does not change the character of the zoning district where the property is located, as it is in keeping with the intent of the code, and does not permit a use not otherwise permitted in the district in which the property lies. As the petitioner stated, this is an allowed use, single-family uses, as well as the density is low in comparison to what is allowed in the R2M district. Finding F, the variance, if granted, does not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the municipality. This standard is met. It is not an issue with health and safety. If anything, it maintains the use of the Schoenbeck House, as noted in the HPP. Finding G, persons with disabilities are provided with access as required by the American Disabilities Act. The standard is met, as ADA will be accommodated through the site plan review. Finding H, the variance is granted is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use of the land. This variance or standard is met. It is the minimum required to make use of the relocation of the Schoenbeck House in order to on this R2M lot specifically. And with that, I believe I've gone through all the findings.
Mr. Smythe.
No, thanks. No comment.
Okay. You seconded. So, any other comments from the board? If not, I guess we're ready to vote. Ken, did you have a comment?
Madam Chair, yes, I did.
Okay.
My comment was I'm having a very hard time supporting this motion. While I think it's a noble plan to try and preserve this house and keep it within the same subdivision, I just find that it does not meet the conditions that we are to judge these variances under. I wish there was a better definition or another method to address multifamily dwelling style and two-family dwelling styles rather than to have this variance come before the board. I do think it could be appropriate to have two single-family structures on this lot, given the character of the buildings and the preservation that's taking place. But adding another unit merely to meet the multifamily definition is certainly a self-imposed hardship, in my opinion, and I will not be supporting the motion.
Any other comments? Any other? Mr. Smythe.
Sorry, I wasn't ready to speak before. I think Ken summed up my concern. I live in South Addition. I understand the goal for density. I understand the intent of this. I appreciate everything that the petitioner's doing. The loophole problem in the three structures on one lot for R2M, it's so far from what the intent of that is. The adjacent properties are much different with the Pioneer Home in the R3, the apartment building next door. That character doesn't fit with all of what South Addition, the R2M, is trying to preserve. So I'm torn on this specific location. My question specifically on the garage was related to if the petitioner was interested in two homes on that lot. I think the idea of saving that house and fitting it on 7,000 square foot lot makes sense. I think as soon as you add the garage, in my opinion, in holding up R2M, I think it's grabbing a little. That's my personal position is here on the board, and with that, relative to the specific zoning for this lot, I couldn't support the way it's being presented today.
Any other comments? Ms. Eicher? Nothing? Okay. Are we ready? Vote. Okay, the motion did not pass. 5 yeas were required. And if Mr. Hale can hear us, then it's time to go home. There it is. Okay, moving on, we are now to case H1, which is case number 2019-0025. David and Judith Bish are the applicants. Are the applicants here? Thank you. So will the staff please describe the notice given in the case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On February 21st, 2019, a total of 491 public hearing notices were mailed. 2 comments were received stating no objection to the variance. No comments were received from the Northeast Community Council.
Is there any objection to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, we'll move on. Will the staff please present the case?
This is a request to modify an existing dimensional variance to allow a proposed exterior staircase and garage deck enlargement to encroach up to 4.2 feet into the 5-foot side yard setback. This encroachment would be in addition to the 4.2-foot garage and deck encroachments that were previously approved. After hearing case 2018-0088 on September 13th, 2018, the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals approved Resolution 2018-004. This resolution granted a variance from AMC Table 2106-1 dimensional standards to allow a previously existing second garage bay topped with a deck to encroach up to 4.2 feet into the required 5-foot side yard setback as shown on a 2018 as-built survey. However, per the applicant's building plans, an exterior staircase was also proposed to be constructed, and the existing garage deck was proposed to extend about 10 feet further south into an area that was previously an overhang. Neither the exterior staircase nor the garage deck modification were included in the 2018 as-built survey referenced by the resolution. Because the as-built survey was drafted after parts of the original structure were demolished, this created a discrepancy between the proposed building plans and the original variance. The applicant seeks to reconcile this discrepancy through the modified variance request tonight. For further clarification, the images on page 3 of the staff report illustrate the discrepancy. Looking at the standards, Standard A is substantially met. While the addition of the exterior staircase and the modification of the deck garage increases the encroachment, these elements will not encroach further than the 4.2 feet originally approved in Resolution 2018-004 and approximately match the building's original footprint. Therefore, the board's original decision should apply in this case as well. Looking at Standard B, it is substantially met. Denial of the variance would create undue hardship by preventing the deck, garage, and exterior staircase from being rebuilt to match the original structure, which would nullify the intent of Resolution 2018-004. Standard C is substantially met. In the previous resolution, the board found that the hardship was not self-imposed. Since the exterior staircase and garage deck approximately match the original structure's footprint and will not encroach further than the originally approved 4.2 feet, the board's original finding in 2018-004 should apply here. Standard D is substantially met. The abutting lot to the east that would be affected by the side yard encroachment is owned by the applicant. Because of this, the board determined in Resolution 2018-004 that the original variance would not adversely affect the use of adjacent property. In addition, the development setback easement on Lot 8, the abutting lot, previously required by the board, will remain a condition of approval. Standard E is substantially met. The requested variance is dimensional and would not allow prohibited use, nor would it change the character of the zoning district as a whole. Standard F is substantially met. There are no health or safety issues. Standard G, substantially met. This is not applicable. Standard H, also substantially met. The applicant is requesting only the minimum variance that would allow the previously existing structure to be rebuilt, which follows the intent of Resolution 2018-004. With that being said, the department finds that all 8 standards are substantially met and therefore recommends approval of the variance, subject to the conditions on page 6 of the staff report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the staff by the board at this point? Seeing none, are there any questions of the staff by the applicant? He indicates no. Okay, will the applicant please come forward, state and spell your name for the record.
David Bish, B-I-C-H. Good evening. I'm here again from the last time I was here in September, and I'm going to thank you for the graciously granting me that variance. And I wouldn't be here if I would have understood the difference between an as-built and an engineering design. That was my error, and so I'm back. Just a little history of refresher of why I'm here is we purchased a home in 1986, and we did basically a shake of the hands, and I took his mortgage, and he left with my money, the earnest money. And a few years after I lived in there, I realized that the deck that he had built without a building permit was a flat roof, and it leaked. And over the course of from the 90s until 2017, we attempted to patch it, but we were unsuccessful. So in 2017, we decided that the only course of action was to rebuild, demo the garage and the deck, and then rebuild it. During that time, we attempted from the 17 through the fall of 18, we attempted numerous times to get a building permit and a demo permit and then follow-on building permit. And since the deck was so close to the property line, all of our attempts failed until we came to the board last September. Not knowing the difference between an as-built and the engineering architecture drawings, the building permit was after you granted the variance. We went to the building to get a new building permit, and it was denied because they didn't match. The drawings didn't match with the building. So I guess the staff had addressed the whole issue with the demo. The as-built was done after the demo, so the footprint was didn't reflect the overhang and then the staircase. So just to summarize it, I'm at fault for not understanding the difference between the two, and I believe if I would have listened to Mr. Ayers in September when he asked me the question, "Are you sure you want it to be built to the as-built?" and my response was yes, but perhaps it should have said, "What's the difference?" So that's all I have, and I hope that I granted the variance so I can use my deck and garage. Thank you. And by the way, I do own the adjacent property.
So he has 7 minutes for rebuttal. Okay, you have 7 minutes for rebuttal. And
thank you.
Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Bish? Okay, thank you. Wait, what? Oh, Mr. Ayers, sorry.
Through the chair, Mr. Bish. Yeah, my concern back in September was that the building was going to be reconstructed in conformance with the existing foundation that was in place. And now that's not the case. I don't know that it's significant enough of a difference to object to the approval of the case, but I will say again that when you come back in with an as-built, this encroachment cannot be any more than 4.2 feet. And
Understand.
you need to ensure that that
Yes,
takes
sir.
place.
My builder is very aware of that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Are there any questions of the applicant by the staff?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in case 2019-0025? Anyone at all? Okay. Seeing none, does the, there's nothing to rebut, really. Does the applicant have anything further to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then we'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. Can I have a positive motion, please? Ms. Emerton.
Yes, I move to approve case 2019-2-0025 based on staff conditions 1 through 4.
On page 6.
On page 6.
And Ms. Eicher seconds. So would you speak to your motion, Ms. Emerton?
Yeah, I intend to support my motion based on the findings provided by staff for A through H, that they're all substantially met.
Okay. Ms. Eicher?
For the record, do you need one of the board members to walk through each of the findings? Or is our adoption of staff's findings A through H sufficient for your purposes?
If the board agrees with staff recommendations, then I think that's sufficient for this case.
Thank you for clarifying. Then I don't have anything additional to add to what staff has cited in the board, and I intend to support the motion.
Any other discussion? Anyone else? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variance is approved.
Thank you.
The next case is case 2019-0027. Petitioners are the Swansons. Are they here? Thank you. Will the staff please describe the notice given in the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On February 21st, 2019, 125 public hearing notices were sent out to neighboring property owners within 500 feet of the petition site. A notice of public hearing was also mailed to the Girdwood Board of Supervisors as well as the Girdwood Board of Supervisors Land Use Committee. The site was properly posted and the applicant did provide an affidavit of posting. And notice was also published on the municipal web page, which expires tomorrow. Thank you.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The petitioner is applying for a variance to allow an elevated building pad and rock wall to encroach 12.3 feet within a 25-foot stream protection setback The subject parcel has an existing non-conforming single-family home located on it which encroaches 12.3 feet into the stream protection setback. The existing home experiences seasonal flooding during periods of heavy snowmelt and rainfall. The owners intend to demolish the existing structure and construct a new single-family home. To mitigate the flood risk, there is a need to elevate the proposed structure so it is no longer affected by seasonal flooding. The submitted plans show a two-story single-family dwelling being constructed upon an elevated earthen building pad. The toe of the earthen building pad will encroach approximately 12.3 feet within the 25-foot stream protection setback. The petitioner has chosen to site their home in this orientation to preserve existing vegetation and mature trees along their southern property line. The Planning Department has conducted an evaluation of the application and presents the following findings. For Standard A, the standard is not met. There do not appear to be any exceptional physical circumstances of the land that warrant the granting of this variance. The lot is affected by a perennial stream which requires a 25-foot stream protection setback measured from the ordinary high water mark. Planning staff conducted an analysis of the subject parcel using GIS software and current municipal stream data. Considering the size of the stream protection setback, the total area on property affected by the setback is approximately 4,792 square feet. Taking into account applicable setbacks and easements, the total area on property south of the stream in which a single-family home could be placed on is 6,077 square feet. The footprint of the proposed structure totals 1,979 square feet. A structure of this size could be placed in a conforming location within the subject parcel. Additionally, the lot is similar in size and shape to other adjoining lots. Other construction impediments, such as wetlands or slopes, do not affect this parcel. Standard B, standard is not met. While this lot is encumbered by a perennial stream, the stream protection setback only encompasses approximately 1/3 of the lot. This provides the owner ample space to construct a single-family home within a conforming location. Strict application of code will not create an exceptional or undue hardship upon the property owner, nor will it deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties within the same district. Standard C, the standard is not met. While the location of the stream channel is out of the control of the owner has ample space on site to locate a new single-family dwelling. The applicant has chosen to locate the home in this orientation in an effort to preserve mature trees along the southern property line. Single-family homes within the GR2 district are required to retain 30% natural vegetation and 50% permeable surfaces on site. Natural vegetation as defined by code can either be existing or new landscaping installed in accordance with the standards of Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Chapter 9, subsection 070E. Vegetative buffer requirements do not apply to single-family homes within the GR2 district. Sufficient evidence to demonstrate that a loss of natural vegetation on site due to the placement of the proposed structure in a conforming location would cause a violation of natural vegetation retention standards has not been provided. Thus, the building pad and home footprint could be shifted to a conforming location outside of the stream protection setback or reduced in size without causing an encroachment into any required setback. Standard D, standard is met. Given the character, history, and current zoning of the neighborhood, it does not appear that the granting of this variance will adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. Neighboring property owners will not be impeded from making full lawful use of their land as a result of this variance. Standard E, the standard is met. The requested variance will not change the character of the zoning district. The GR2 district is intended for primarily detached single-family and two-family residential dwellings with municipal services. Granting the stream protection setback encroachment will not permit a use other than what is already allowed under current code. Standard F, the standard is met. No adverse effects to the health, safety, or welfare of the residents of the municipality are anticipated if this variance is approved. Standard G, the standard is met. It's simply just not applicable to this variance request. Standard H, standard is not met. As previously stated under Standard A, this residence is located on a lot that can accommodate the placement of a structure equal to or greater than the size of the current residence within a conforming location. There are no significant topographic, wetland, or other physical impediments that would prevent the owner from constructing the proposed structure within a conforming location. Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Chapter 3, subsection 240G2 requires that all 8 standards be substantially met in order for a variance to be granted. The department finds that standards A, B, C, and H are not met, and standards D, E, F, and G are met. Therefore, staff must recommend a denial of this variance. And I would just like to point out, too, there were comments that were submitted after the staff packet was finalized. Those are in Agenda Item H2, Supplementary Packet 1. And just for clarity, we did receive some revised comments from Jeffrey Urbanis and Watershed Management, Municipal Watershed Management Services. I believe the board does have those comments in their packet, but it was not advertised on the municipal website. So as such, my apologies for the lengthy presentation, but I would like to read those comments into the record. So the comment reads as follows. Watershed Management Services has previously submitted comments on this case dated March 26, 2019. Following that submittal, Watershed Management Services was contacted by the applicant seeking more detailed information about our comments. Watershed Management Services relayed what elements it felt were missing from the variance application. Following that conversation, the applicant provided 2 revised site plan drawings. These drawings show the extent of the existing stream setback encroachments on the lot and more clearly show how the proposed improvements will be sited relative to those existing disturbances. Those drawings have also been submitted to the Planning Department and are the basis for our revised comments supporting the request for a variance. Watershed Management Services supports the requested variance for the following reasons. We have a list of 4 bullet points here. The first bullet point being this project reduces the size of an existing encroachment, thereby reducing the area of the stream setback disturbance. Point 2, the project proposes to remove a structure from the stream setback area, reducing the potential for damage to property or safety from flooding. Point 3, this project mitigates a known existing drainage problem. And point 4, as proposed, the site design minimizes the removal of large trees. While tree retention is not a specific part of setback provisions, it is consistent with sound watershed management. The retention of natural tree canopy is known to reduce the size of runoff peak flows and prevent soil erosion. That is the end of the comment dated April 3rd, 2019 from Jeffrey Urbanis from Watershed Management Services. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And I'll take any questions the board may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff by the board? Ms. Emerton.
I guess my question would be in regard to item H. So you said the standard's not met because there are no significant topographic wetland or other physical impediments. So we can't count trees as a physical impediment to moving?
We can.
Through the chair, Ms. Emerton, the trees do not need to remain. So there aren't any standards, evidence that the removal of the trees will impact the presence of existing vegetation, or it won't. It'll put the lot under 30% existing vegetation. That evidence hasn't been provided. If that evidence had been provided, and we knew that if cutting down the tree would further them, take them further out of conformance, that could be used. But in this case, preservation of the tree is not required.
Thank you. I just know some of those trees in Girdwood are giant, so kind of wonder. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff by the board? Are there any questions of staff by the applicant? He indicates not. Then will the applicant please come forward, state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Robert Swanson, S-W-A-N-S-O-N. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration today. I'm just going to address the standards that were said that they were not met. In Standard A, without repeating it, you know it, I believe the standard is met. The report findings ignored the underlying issue. The lot slopes 5% from Stowe Drive to north and is prone to flooding. The remaining area for development mentioned in the report assumes a flat area that is totally usable and does not consider all the features involved with this property. Those physical features are not only 1/3 of the lots affected by the stream setback, the slope and lot of the drainage from the road stream causes flooding to over 30% of the property, as requiring the need for a building pad. And I might add the 30% that's prone to flooding is actually from the stream eastward. There's existing grandfathered structures, utilities, and disturbances in the setback that, if removed, need to be naturally recovered. And the remaining area for development outside the stream setback has a considerable stand of mature trees that provide erosion protection and meet the intent of the Girdwood goals for lot development. And the eastern side of the lot is also constrained by an exposed overhead power line. When you take all of them combined, it creates a situation that makes it unique. It's not common, it's exceptional in its own right with all of the conditions. In Standard B, again, I think it's met. As in Standard A, there's exceptional physical circumstances of the property, and there are few, if any, other lots in the district that have all the same circumstances that this property has. Considering the reason of planning that the remaining 6,077 square feet is adequate, I would say that even all other factors aside, being restricted to only 41% of the lot size is not common or reasonable. And when you consider all the site constraints previously mentioned, the total reasonable area for development is quite less. Remember, we have to build a pad, we have to elevate. If, as proposed, the existing grandfather structures were abandoned, we would lose the rights to this area and be constrained to a substantially reduced area. The strict application of the code would be a hardship and deny us of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same district by constraining the proposed development to an unreasonable area. Adjoining properties in this area of any similar size and shape are not restricted to this level and have all the same issues. In regards to Standard C, I believe this is met. As stated previously, the area available for reasonable development is constrained by many existing factors, all existing since original lot development. The flooding of the property is the driving issue that requires an elevated pad that needs to be sited appropriately. The proposed location of the elevated pad was carefully thought out to place the new structure in compliance with the setback, minimize the requested encroachment in the stream setback, and improve that area, and also to avoid removing nearly all of the remaining trees and natural vegetation on the remainder of the property. The overall Girdwood goals for lot development do prioritize natural vegetation preservation. If you reference 21.09.070.A1 in general, it spells out what the intent of Chapter 9.070 is intended to do. Even without those goals, common sense should also apply in protecting natural vegetation, not only for erosion control, but also protecting adjacent property owners' rights and expected privacy and values. If the pad and building were moved, as the planning report suggests it could, removal of all large trees would be required and would be probable erosion on the northeastern side of the property and exposure to the overhead power line. And Standard H, I believe the standard is met. And I believe the key words in this standard are reasonable use of land. Considering what has been previously presented, I believe what has been proposed is not only the minimum required, it's also being reasonable in the use of the property. We're trying to move into compliance and improve the stream setback. The overall design as proposed was intended to remove existing grandfathered structures currently in the setback, replace those disturbed areas with more natural landscape rock wall and fill that recovers those areas in a more natural form to avoid flooding issues. The minor requested encroachment of the filled pad would also provide a net benefit to the stream setback in filtering any snow and rain runoff from the new building. Recovering the current encroachments with environmentally valuable landscaping and filtering material while also preserving environmentally important trees and vegetation should be taken into consideration. And I believe that what has been requested, considering all of the physical features of the property, is not only the minimum required, but also the best possible use or possible design to improve the stream setback area, improve the road drainage while protecting adjacent properties from potential damage, and protect their rights and values as well. And I believe if you look through the public comments, there were multiple letters of support and non-opposition, and only one in opposition. And I need to add, the one in opposition was actually describing a different drainage that's to the north of my property. And also there's letters of support from Girdwood LUC, GBOS, Mr. Kelly, the Girdwood Road Service Area Manager, and of course, Mr. Urbanis from Watershed Management, who, once I clarified what our intent was, I think there's fairly strong support for this. And I'd like to point out, if you read 21070-020A1 in general, it spells out the requirements for or the intent of stream setbacks. And when you read through this and you realize that what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to meet the intent of the stream setback requirement. And we're trying to preserve also other vegetation that's important to not just us, it's important to the valley and adjacent properties. The whole issue here is the slope lot and the drainage from Vale and Stowe Drive converges in this area. And the necessity for a pad is what's driving the placement of a building on the lot. And I think in the second paragraph of A1, when you read that the regulations recognize the interest of landowners of existing lots to make reasonable use of the land, I think is important to take into consideration. I think that's it. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Swanson by the board? Mr. Ayers.
Through the chair, Mr. Swanson, thank you for your presentation. It was very well prepared. Also recognize that you're moving toward conformance here.
Yes.
Looks to me like you're doing the best you can with what you have. I'm very familiar with this subdivision and the groundwater issues there. I've surveyed most of it before they put in the water lines, so I've walked it all. I don't have a specific question, but I did want to thank you for your presentation and taking the time to do this right and do it before you got yourself in trouble. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Smythe?
Two things, please. Can you explain to me the stream? I can't see a clear picture of it. It sounds more like it floods every year, and it's more of a drainage ditch than a stream.
It does become a drainage ditch, and a lot of people like to say that, but it is designated and it has a setback. It flows at an angle across my property is what kind of complicates the issue. What happens is when we have heavy snow years, obviously snow removal fills all the ditches. They fill the inlet and the outlet of that culvert, and I've walked out my door getting ready to go. I coach ski racing there, and I've opened up and went, well, I'm going to have to change my boots. Basically, my driveway, if you look at the topography, it becomes the drainage because it's plowed. And fortunately, the cabin is on pile. It's a 70s cabin. And it's come within 4 inches of coming in the door. And it's, when it just rains and the culverts, when it's not heavy snow and the culverts overflow, it runs down the driveway and just, we have a stream underneath the cabin. So we hear the trickling of water. It's kind of pleasant, but it's not really pleasant being right there. So the lot is, the problem with the lot is just, if you look at the topography, it is just prone to always flooding. And I've thought about this for pretty much, the last 15 years of what I could do to fix the situation. And I have the grandfather rights to say, okay, let's build back in the same location and raise it out of the flood. Well, if I do that, we're not improving the stream setback.
So what I see, the building structure is completely out of the setback, but the pad around there, why is the pad so much larger in just that area?
The pad's not. We're trying to, the pad is actually twofold, as I said. The plan was, and I clarified this to Mr. Urbanis, was I'm going to remove those structures and use large rock to construct a landscape rock wall that basically would replace those physical structures. And that recovered it and allows us to fill up and create a landscape area in that part of the setback. Moving the building over, I moved it over so that the eaves would be at the setback. And having enough pad there, one, just for the surcharge of the building and to have access around the building was important. And it's really a lot narrower than I would like a building pad.
Thanks.
Any other questions by the board of the applicant? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone in the public wishing to testify in case 2019-0027?
Good evening. My name is Caroline Ahrens, Ahrens. I live up the street on Alpine Meadows, and the lot, we built our house in 1992. The lot next to us, these nice rules were not in existence back in the mid-90s, and our neighbors pretty much took all the trees off their property. As soon as they did that, we had a few windstorms, and we've had 3 trees land on our house because of that block of trees being removed. Once you start messing with one lot and take the trees off one lot, these are hemlocks. Hemlocks are rotten from the inside. They have very low roots. They don't go deep. And once you start messing with the trees and take off a bunch, it endangers everything around. And as far as the water goes, that's the water coming from up our street all the way down. And yeah, you could call it a stream. In the summer, it's barely a trickle. In the fall and in the spring, the snow is melting off, and you can see it. If you were to look at Google Earth, you had asked about that. All you see is snow where there's supposed to be a stream, and that's because they've pushed it off. In the past couple of years, they've done a great job redoing all the drainage, or they're trying to redo all the drainage in Girdwood so we don't have these kind of problems. And what Mr. Swanson wants to do sounds like a beautification of it. He's creating a home that, no offense, Rob, he's older, and he and his wife plan to live there, so they want a safe home that they're not going to be flooded out. For living in Girdwood, we want to encourage people to stay. His new property is going to be way more taxes than he's paying now on the little shack that they live on. Yay, Girdwood, we get more money. So I have seen this stream. It flows down from our house into a field, and then down the road it just trickles right down, and I think it's going to be an improvement. I know he does a lot with the landscaping of smaller plants, but saving those trees is really, really important to everybody around. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question of Ms. Ahrens by the board? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case 2019-0027?
My name is Marco Zaccaro, Z-A-C-C-A-R-O. I'm with Z Architects, and we're assisting the Swansons with their project. I'm also a neighbor of the Swansons. I support the Swansons' application for dimensional variance into the stream setback. The Swansons' use of the stream setback for landscaped retaining walls nearly a use by right per AMC 2112.045, the new stream ordinance, as he could rebuild a structure within the footprint of the existing house that he has and continue the use of his legally non-conforming driveway, both of which he is proposing to vacate. The totality of the application is clearly an improvement over the existing condition for the stream, which in this case is little more than a drainage ditch. We actually have some images of the stream on Google Earth, and it runs down the ditch line of the road where it exits the Swanson's property. When we worked on the language of 21.12.045 during the ordinance review process, Girdwood had a lot of input into this specific section because we wanted to provide flexibility for redevelopment of grandfathered houses within the Girdwood stream setbacks. There's a lot of older houses in the Girdwood stream setbacks, especially on Alyeska Creek, and we were afraid that the strict application of the 50% rule would enforce slum-like style type houses to continue within stream setbacks, because if people remove more than 50% of their house, they lost their grandfather rights. So it was enforcing subpar housing within Girdwood stream setbacks. So this 2112.045 is specifically for these kinds of conditions. It's to allow flexible redevelopment in Girdwood stream setbacks. You can completely remove your structure and then replace it with a structure. In this case, Rob is proposing to replace his existing structure and driveway with a retaining wall that would help support his foundation, which he needs to elevate so that he doesn't have water running into his garage. The natural vegetation that the Swansons seek to preserve are natural hemlock and spruce trees that are several hundred years old, and a neighborhood asset. The Girdwood area plan and the Girdwood land use regulations support retention of mature trees, which in this case would, if they were removed, would be a value that would not reappear on the property for, 100 years.
Are you done?
I am done.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Zaccaro? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case 2019-0027? Anyone at all? Okay. Does the applicant have any rebuttal? He indicates not. Staff, do you have any rebuttal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few points. I don't want to dismiss the comments of support or no objection by reviewing agencies, but I would like to point out that each agency reviews a case based upon their scope of review. Traffic Department looks at any conflicts with parking. Watershed looks at any potential impacts to the stream itself. Right-of-way looks at any impact to their function to do their job. The question before the board is whether or not the stream setback protection on site is great enough of an encumbrance that a reasonably sized home could not be placed on the lot without creating an encroachment into the stream protection setback. Planning staff has conducted an analysis of the site and has determined that a reasonably sized home could be placed on this lot in a conforming location. And one other point of clarification, the petitioner has mentioned that he will be recovering the site. That does not meet the definition of restoration in Title 21. Definition of restoration in Title 21 is putting or bringing back into a former, normal, or unimpaired state or condition. And the only situation where that definition would be met is if the non-conforming home were demolished and the area of disturbance were to be replanted with natural vegetation. And that is not the case in this matter. So, thank you.
Okay. Close the public hearing now, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the matter of case number 2019-0027, I move for approval of the variance from AMC 2107-020B stream setbacks to allow an elevated building pad and rock wall to encroach 12.3 feet into the required 25-foot stream protection setback. Excuse me, subject to Department recommendations 1 and 2 on page 7.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Smythe. Mr. Ayers, would you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do intend to support my motion. I do find that under item A that there are existing exceptional and extraordinary physical circumstances. The stream itself does that. This is a corner lot. The topography on the lot contributes to that. There is an existing structure that already encroaches into this stream protection setback, and this variance will move it towards conformance. I find that all of those things meet Condition A. Condition B, basically the same findings as A. 44% of the buildable area of the lot is not available because of the stream protection setback. I think that's a significant impact, and it's definitely different than the other lots in the area. The hardship is not self-imposed on Condition C. Again, I believe that the petitioner is doing the right thing and moving this towards conformance, and at the end of the day, the stream will be better protected by having this variance in place with the improvements they intend to make. I'll also note that it is supported by the watershed hydrologist based on their revised comments that were dated April 3rd. Condition D, this standard is met. I agree with staff's findings. Condition E, this standard is also met, again agreeing with staff's findings. Condition F, this standard is also met, agreeing with staff's findings. G does not apply, and H, I believe that this is not only a reasonable variance and that moving it towards conformance is in the best interest of the community. So there you go.
Thank you. Mr. Smythe?
Yes, I have to agree with Mr. Ayers that it's moving in the direction of conformance. When compared to what is there now versus if this was a new development, I would agree with staff's comments in this case, considering what's there, the fact that we've got large trees to remain, a stream setback that is not going to affect others' view sheds, and the fact that there's existing structure within it now, and removing that structure is the priority. So I intend to support the motion.
Any other discussion? Ms. Eicher?
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciated both Mr. Ayers and Mr. Smythe's comments, and I also wanted to just recognize the helpfulness of the petitioner's preparation and materials, and that greatly assists us in our decision making, and I found a lot of your comments persuasive, so thank you for that, and I also plan to support the motion.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote. Okay. Motion passes. Variance is granted. Does anyone care to take a recess? Keep going. Okay, on we go. Last case. Case 2019-0028. Maggie Kelly is the petitioner. Okay, petitioner is here. And will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On February 21st, 2019, 195 public hearing notices were mailed, and 2 responses in support of the variance were received.
Is there any objection to the sufficiency of notice in the case? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a variance from AMC 2105-070D8BIV. That's to allow an accessory building garage to exceed 50% of the total gross floor area of the principal residence. The applicable code provision reads in the R2M, all garages accessory to a single residential use, whether attached or detached from the principal structure, shall be no larger than 50% of the total gross floor area of the principal structure. So the petitioner is asking for a variance to build a detached garage to be used for 2 vehicle parking spaces, some storage space, and a second-story office space. The existing primary structure is 1,320 square feet with an attached 230 square foot garage. the petitioner is seeking to build a 725 square foot two-car garage, which is 295 square feet over the 660 square feet, and the 660 square feet is half of the structure. The driveway is approximately 24 feet in length, which accommodates only one car. That's part of the reason why they're seeking the variance to build a garage. The two-car garage will be in the rear of the lot with access from the alley. Staff has reviewed the standards and has found that Standard A does not appear to be substantially met. There's no physical exceptional circumstance of the land. The lot's not affected by slopes, streams, or wetlands. It's rectangle in nature, similar in size to the other adjoining lots. The petition site does have access in the rear of the lot to a 25-foot general use easement that was dedicated by Plat 7048. So this 7,000 square foot lot meets the minimum lot size required for single-family residences in the R2M district. That minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, so it's 1,000 feet over the R2M minimum. Standard B, staff has found that does not appear to be substantially met. There doesn't appear to be, as I mentioned, any environmental constraints that would preclude development of the property. Standard C, staff does not find that doesn't appear to be substantially met. The owner seeks a detached garage to park vehicles and provide extra storage space with a little bit of office space. The 7 square foot lot would accommodate a garage separate from the existing structure while being within the 40% maximum lot coverage requirement. The limiting factor is the existing garage attached to the house is small, really small. At 230 square feet is not practical to park a vehicle in it due to there's some mechanical boiler, water heater, I believe, in there. It does meet the definition of a garage, though, as defined by AMC 2105-070D8. In relation to condition 2, staff finds that standard is met. The applicant has stated that the proposed garage will not encroach into the alley. The residential lots have vehicle access to the alley. The neighbor adjoining the north property boundary and the neighbor to the south, they both have garages in the rear yard. And a garage is a common amenity in a residential neighborhood. The variance, if granted, should not adversely affect the use of adjacent property owners. The petitioner has received comments from his neighbors in support of the garage and agreeing that it would have no negative impact to the neighborhood. Standard E has been met. The requested variance for a garage to exceed the 50% for the gross floor area of the principal structure will not change the character of the R2M zoning district. Garages are a permitted use in the zoning district, and if the variance is granted, it would not allow use that's not permitted. Standard F has been met. That's no adverse effects to health, safety, and welfare are anticipated. Standard G, that standard is not applicable to detached single-family residences, therefore it's met. And Standard H, staff finds that it does not appear to be substantially met. The minimum variance, let's see here. Due to limiting the size of the proposed detached garage, still makes reasonable use of the land. With that being said, the department finds that standards A, B, C, and H are not substantially met, and therefore we recommend the denial of the variance. If after the public hearing the board finds that all 8 standards are met, then the approval should be subject to the conditions 1 and 2 found on page 6 of the staff packet. I'll be able to answer any questions if you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff by the board? Ms. Hickok.
Through the chair, do you happen to know what the proposed lot coverage is?
I do not know. The petitioner may know what the lot coverage is going to be.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ayers?
To the chair, staff, this is a relatively new section of the Code of Residential Design Standards that are applying here. It was my understanding that At least one section of this was actually repealed. Did that only apply to R1 and R1A lots and not affect the multifamily district?
And multifamily, they wouldn't apply to this because it's a single-family residential. That was only, you were correct. And and that applies to multifamily.
Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Smythe?
I'm late on the draw tonight. And just a clarification to staff, if the square footage were larger, there would be no exception relative to the 50%. They would not need to ask for a variance, correct?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, if they did a small addition to their house, and met that 50% threshold. It's a 1955 home, and it's very small.
You okay, Mr. Smythe? Okay, could you give me that citation for the definition of a garage again?
Yes, that is... That is AMC, it's a 2105070D8A. Would you like me to read what the definition is?
How about the page number?
Let's see here.
Did you have it? I had it, and I marked it, and I can't find what I marked.
Okay, 07.
But what I remember of it, read it. Yes,
A
please.
detached accessory or portion of a principal structure that is used for the parking and storage of vehicles owned and operated by the residents thereof. So the petitioner can go into further detail. That small 200 and the small 230 square foot garage that they have, it is encumbered a lot by a lot of the mechanical. However, they have a garage, a one-car garage door. With
and it's
that,
the door?
It's a regular garage door, and that's
But you
what.
can't park a vehicle in it.
It would have to be a small vehicle.
Then
You technically
I would argue that it does
meets.
not meet the definition of a garage, but,
Okay, yeah.
all right. Anyway, now I've lost my place. Present the case, any questions? Okay. Will the applicant please come forward and state your name? And yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We're still talking. Never mind. Mr. Ayers.
Through the chair to staff, quick question. What defines that space as a garage? Is it merely the door that's on it? And that door is large enough to allow a vehicle? If there was not a garage door, let's say there was a
wall
man
with a
door, would it still be a garage?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Mr. Hale.
Through the chair, yeah. So that's kind of my question. If they were to wall that off so it's not a garage, it would add to the square footage of the house, right?
That is correct, and I believe the petitioner can go a little bit further into that because that was discussed when they first came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No? Is everybody? Okay. Will the petitioner please come forward?
Thank you for taking this time. I'm Maggie Kelly, and my last name is Kelly.
Okay, please present your case.
And just to follow up on the question, with the garage and the house, the lot coverage would be at 36%.
Thank you.
I think that was the question you were asking. So we bought this house to have a house to get old in, because we're hoping that's going to happen someday, and not too soon. And when we bought it, we had originally requested a setback to build the garage there because that we wanted to have a garage. That was one of the things we wanted. And we received an approval from the planning department in March of 2017 to do that. And so we started remodeling the house, and we took it down to studs, and we put in new electrical and plumbing and insulation and redid it all nice. And so as we, spent money, we had to get a little more money to start working on the garage. So we hired Josh here at Willow Ridge Construction to start designing the garage, which he did. And our goal was to have a place to park the 2 cars and have a workshop to do some metalwork and some office space upstairs, and that we would use the little space that they call the little tiny garage as a wood shop. And in March of 2018, we received, they reviewed the building plan, and we had an approval of the building plan. And then in April, we were notified that we couldn't have the garage because of the 50% thing. And which kind of surprised us, because there's lots of small houses, not all of them as small as this house, but the same 700,000 square foot lots with double car garages on them. And so you're kind of like, well, we wanted one too. Anyway, so we would still, that information kind of stopped our enthusiasm, and we stopped the project, but we really do still want to do it if we can, if you let us. And the items that haven't been met, in the actual topography of that lot, there probably isn't anything that is exceptional, but that little tiny garage isn't really a garage, and that's kind of the problem. One of the upsides, though, that is exceptional, that supports the garage, is that it does have those 2 frontage lots, and so that we do have full access to the back of that lot as well as the front where the house is. So it does make it a little more practical to add a garage on there. And like I said, I don't know if a 2-car garage is extravagant, but there are other people in the neighborhood with similar size lots that have a 2-car garage, and we'd like to have a 2-car garage too. Kind of both to protect our property, and it unfortunately is not the safest neighborhood in the whole world, but we like it and we're happy there, and to protect our property, because we actually have had a few things walk away in that neighborhood since we've been working on the house. And then the point of C where it kind of the undue hardship, we could build the garage if we expanded the house, but expanding the house to build a garage just seems a little silly. It would be more than an inconvenience for us to take the time and money to increase the house size just because we wanted a garage. So the building, the garage could be built on the lot without the variance, as long as we didn't park 2 cars in it. It would be workshop, and it's kind of that garage door thing. If we don't put a garage door on it, in part of it, or we make it storage instead of parking, then the building would still be there, but we wouldn't be able to park a car inside of it. We'd have to park the car on the driveway, which that seems a little like if the building's already there. So that's kind of my story.
Okay. You have
Do you have anything
5.5 minutes of rebuttal. I think you're going to need much. Okay. Right. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? Mr. Hale.
Thank you, through the chair. Sounds like you guys had talked about maybe making that garage not a garage, the part that's in your house.
I'd really like to make it a basement. Is what I like to do. Because we didn't. As opposed to being living area and having to build it up and put floor, because it's low and it's concrete, and that works fine for throwing a wood shop in, but it doesn't.
But I think what you're trying to do is change the definition. You're not trying to change the structure. If you can change the definition to part of the house and not a garage, you add 230 square feet maybe to your taxes, but then you can have a 775 square foot garage. So, you would cure it by removing the door and wooding it off, probably. Is that right?
My understanding is if the overhead door just went away, then that living space, I mean, that would never fit. I mean, it wouldn't be
You're taking
proper
the door
living
out
space.
And you're changing the definition.
So the garage is defined by the door.
Apparently, and you would probably need to add that square footage to your house for tax purposes.
And that's fine. It just seems there's nothing in the code about the door, though. It doesn't say anything about a door.
I don't know. It seems like it's the cheapest, easiest way to bring it in compliance, and you don't need a variance at all if you do that. You're not parking it in anyway, right?
No, we don't want to park in it. We got on the Muni website, read all that stuff about benzene. I don't want to park in that garage.
So wall it off and build as big a garage as you want, up to 775 in the back.
So the inside part of the garage then doesn't have to meet the other codes for, like power and water and floors and lights and...
Through the chair, to the applicant, that's a building permitting question about, the insulation type and what kind of lighting and things like that. Egress and windows would be required.
So we'd have to put a wall in and a window. My biggest thing was if you just did that, you have this big old cut up, that concrete floor was put in there in 1956. It's not...
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
My name is Josh Sundstrom, Sundstrom. We did discuss this as one of the options, and it was deemed to be both cost prohibitive and a detraction from the value of the property because it would be several $1,000s to wall that off, add egress, and make it into habitable space. But also then you're removing, effectively it would still be a shop or a garage space, but it wouldn't have an access door, which would be an inconvenience for that. So it is true that would have been an option, but it wasn't a desirable option for the homeowners. Would you agree with that, Maggie?
Well, yeah, having the opportunity to move equipment in and out through that door would be good, and I can't imagine what it would take to build the floor up and then the ceiling. I mean, it's only 7 feet
it's not
tall,
quite,
not even
quite
quite
as
7 feet
simple
tall now.
as it might sound or seem.
We'd probably have to get a variance to have that as living space. I mean, I don't know what the code is, but I don't.
We did discuss it with.
It was more than just taking the door out, but we could take the door out, but it would still have to, I don't know. I guess part of it's the definition of a garage, I guess. If it's a garage in every other way except for the door, then is it no longer a garage, and then does it have to be coded like a bedroom or a living room or a rec room or something?
Well, I believe when Josh came to the counter, it is the intent to keep that small space as it is, kind of with the garage door, and that's why we're here today for the variance.
Yeah, because
you do. I was explained that you do kind of want to keep that as a small with a garage roll-up door like that to get in and out, and that's why we're here for the variance today.
Okay, I need
Yep.
to take some of these board member comments. Mr. Hale? You're done. Mr. Smythe?
Yeah, I was just going to look for a clarification on that exact thing, because we had listed, I thought I had read gross as 1,550, and now I see it broken down. That's another area for argument, because there's nothing in the code for residential that says you can't have a space with a concrete floor and a garage door that doesn't store vehicles. So, but regardless, I think we're all here. The case you've presented is very well laid out. I think we should move forward. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Ayers?
Thank you.
A comment, really, more than anything. These residential design standards, when they were added, were really
unpopular?
Not very popular amongst the development community. And one of the main reasons is they're extremely arbitrary. If you have a very small house and you can only have a very small garage. If I have a 5,000 square foot house, I can have a 2,500 square foot garage. It doesn't take into account individual properties. It's very arbitrary and it's capricious. And I personally had experience with this when it was in R1. I wanted to build a larger garage, and the new code didn't allow me to, but then they changed it because they recognized that, well, if you have a larger lot, maybe you can do that. Having said that, the real solution is to get rid of the residential design standards, because we're going to see a lot of these coming through in the near future. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other, I haven't even the slightest idea where we are. Do you?
Am I allowed to say something else?
Do you know where we are? We've had the case presented, and we've talked to them, and the board isn't. Okay. I think we're at anybody else in the public, yes? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in this case, 2019-0028? Anyone at all? Seeing none, does the staff have any rebuttal?
No.
Does the applicant have any rebuttal? They indicate not. So the public hearing is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case number 2019-0028, I move for approval of the variance from AMC 2105070D8B4 to allow an accessory building garage to exceed 50% of the total gross floor area of the principal residence. Subject to Department's recommendations 1 and 2 on page 6.
Is there a second? Ms. Hammerton. Mr. Ayers, would you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that condition A has been substantially met. The existing size of the physical dwelling on the lot limits the size to an unreasonable amount, and therefore I find that has been substantially met. Condition B, again, the strict application of the code would create an exceptional hardship on the property owner. I believe that having a reasonable sized garage on this property is something that should be allowed, and it is commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. Item C, hardship is not self-imposed. The existing dwelling has been there for many decades, and the size of the garage restriction is an unreasonable limitation by code based upon the size of the dwelling. It would unfairly impact smaller dwellings. Condition D, that standard is met. I agree with staff's findings. Condition E, that standard is met. I agree with staff's findings. Condition F, standard is met. I agree with staff's findings. Condition G does not apply. And condition H, I find that standard has been met, that this variance will allow a reasonable use of the land. Thank you.
Ms. Emerton?
I intend to support my motion, and I agree with Mr. Ayers' comments. The only thing I would add was we could make an argument that the garage, 230 square feet, I believe, or 295 square feet, is not being used as a garage and is not able to be used as a garage, so it shouldn't be counted in the garage total. So that would be the finding I would add, that they're actually within the regs for the garage space that they are allowed.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, please vote. Motion passes, and variance is granted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, with our newly reordered agenda, we are to election of officers. Ms. Iker.
Sorry, I may have gotten trigger happy on emotion. I believe there was a suggestion to re-elect the existing officers for another term or year, so to speak, given the fact that, especially in light of the fact that the zoning board hasn't met very frequently in this last year, and the current officers are doing a stellar job in their current roles. And I would put forth the idea of having the same set continue to serve.
Mr. Ayers?
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. There is a caveat, I'm off in October, so. I can't, I've served my term. Term limits. Are we not done? No, we haven't adjourned? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. In the comment section, board member comments, we would like to welcome our new member. Thank you for applying. Okay. Move to adjourn? Can we? Anybody? Anybody? Ms. Emerton? Mr. Smythe has a second. We're adjourned.